Hey everyone, this is Kyle with Simulation Lab here in Brooklyn, New York. We're going to be doing another tutorial today using 3D Studio Max and TyFlow to create a sort of vacuum effect that you can use for various things like, for example, I just created this. Um, so it's a UFO that sucks up a bunch of sweets and pastries because I love sweets and pastries. I also have another example. This is like basically a Roomba that sucks up everything in its path, including the cat. Yeah. So I posted that to Instagram. To seemed to do pretty well. A lot of people liked it, so I got some requests to do a sort of like a vacuum tutorial, like how to attract objects. So we're going to be rebuilding this scene, little UFO guy, and then we probably won't be using model elements. I might just like scatter some cubes or something around. We're going to be starting from scratch, so I could show you guys every step of the process of like how you create something like that. And then you can apply this method to anything you want, whatever you want to vacuum or attract to a particular object or something. So it's a pretty useful little skill. It's pretty simple to do, so it shouldn't take too long. Um, okay, so we'll jump into Max. First things first is we want to set up our units. Make sure do centimeters. Centimeters. Units are really important. Um, okay, we'll start with creating our UFO first. So create something like that, and we'll do like 60 inches. Typically in these tutorials, I don't really go into modeling stuff, but anyone who's new to 3D Studio Max, it might be helpful to see how some things are modeled at least. So okay, we'll start with like a really simple UFO. I'll just extrude these sides out a little bit. Here you go. Looks kind of like a flying saucer to me. And in that previous video that I showed, there was a dome at the top with a little alien guy sitting in it. It probably took me 20 minutes to model all that, but in this case, we'll just keep it really super simple. So that's our UFO. We'll drag it up a little bit, and then we'll model the tractor beam coming from the bottom. Uh, Actually, yeah, that's fine. I'm gonna toss an edit poly modifier on there. And then I will scale it up like that. There you go. Easy UFO, right? And this tractor beam is actually going to be functional as part of our simulation. So so you can keep it renderable if you want. Basically, you just right click object properties. If you want to make something that's part of the simulation but not in the renderer, then you can uncheck this. But in this case, we'll probably use this in our final render if we were to render this. But for now, we'll go set it to see-through. Um, and then what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to link this tractor beam to the UFO. So wherever we move the UFO, the tractor beam will follow. So we'll do select and link, grab our tractor beam. This little thing pops up, little draggy line thing, and then snap it to our UFO. All right. So now anywhere we put our UFO, the tractor beam is going to follow. Right. So now what we're going to want to do is uh, bind it to a path, our UFO to a path. So we'll go to a smooth path. We'll do something like this. Yeah. just really quickly, I'm not going to get too into modeling this thing to any kind of particular level precision or anything, but just to give it a little bit of variation, kind of make it interesting, we'll do something like that. Start up high, and then it's going to like swoop down maybe. Something like that. That'd be cool. And then go ahead and drag this up a little bit. Okay. And then we'll click on our UFO and we'll go to the Motion tab, Assign Controller, Position. Make sure you have position selected and you click this little Assign Controller icon. And then choose Path Constraint. And now we can adjust, we can add our path. And then we can adjust the percentage along the path that it follows at any given time. So for now, we'll just keep it at 100. You could see that it doesn't really do anything that interesting. It kind of just flows along the path. So we can set it to follow, which is kind of cool. It'll like actually follow the path. And then we could set it to bank if you want. So when it goes around turns, it banks around the turns like that. Cool. So that's cool. And then now we can parametrically control our spline, the flight path, and then something like that'll probably be fine. Maybe we'll bring this down a little bit. It's a bit of a bug sometimes. Sometimes when you adjust the path or you move it around or something, the percentage along the path will change. So you just have to sometimes go back and reset that to 0 if it changes. Or you can animate that. You can set it to be however long you want. If you want to have it pause in the middle or go slower in the middle, you can animate that with curve. But yeah, for now this should be fine. And now, part of our simulation, we require to have a sort of ground plane. So we'll just create a plane. Actually, for now, we're going to go ahead and create a plane that we'll scatter some objects onto that our UFO is going to dip down and pick up. But we want to make sure that our tractor beam cuts through the plane. You can start to see it's starting to do that, which is good. Kind of gets a little nuts there, so maybe we'll turn off banking for now for this example, and then we can bring our path up a little bit. I think that'd be good. And then we can adjust our tractor beam. Go to local, and then you can pull it down by its local Z. Maybe scale that up a little bit. Oops, scale that up a little bit. Should be okay. Let me make this a little wider. Okay, now that we have that set up, we'll go create a TIE-flow object. Put our icon here. Pop up in the editor. Resize this so you can see all the operators here. And then we're ready to rock and roll. So first of all, we're gonna birth some objects. I'm just getting this up so you can see it. So we're gonna birth some objects on that plane. So we'll just maybe we'll start with just 100 for now, and then we're gonna go display geometry, and then birth a shape. So we can remove this. Okay. For now, we'll just do some twigs. I don't know. And then we have to do position object. Pick our plane here. So you can see the twigs are showing up, but they're really super tiny. So what we're going to want to do is scale those up. Maybe like 2000%. Twigs are boring. Let's do something else. Cubes. We'll go with cubes for now. Alright, so now that we have a bunch of cubes scattered out on our plane here, Maybe add a little bit of a variation to them, maybe 50%. Scale that up like a little bit more. Yeah, it's good. You can add a few more. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. So now what we're going to do is toss on a particle physics operator here. Absolute radius is 0. Now what we're going to do is use an object test operator to determine that when a cube passes through the tractor beam. So for our object test, we're going to pick our tractor beam. And then from here, what happens when one of the cubes passes through the tractor beam? Well, we want to find an object, right? So we're going to go to the find object modifier operator, I'm sorry, find target. There you go. All right, set this to geometry. And then our target is going to be our spacecraft. And now from here, you see that nothing really happens yet. So now we have to control the velocity and the acceleration. Actually, you know what? Before we do that, let's name some of these things accordingly. So that's our UFO. That's our tractor beam. Did I spell that right? No. Tractor beam. So make sure that, okay, tractor beam, UFO, cool. So now test action, or sorry, timing, we'll make sure that's set to continuous. And for our velocity, we'll amp this up to 30. And our acceleration, put that up to like 50. Let's see how that works. Okay, one thing I forgot to do, in object test, in distance, we're going to have to set the distance to object. We can keep it radial, and maybe the distance will be around 100 centimeters. Depending on the scale of your scene, you might have to adjust this a little bit. You can add a little bit of variation if you want, but now you can start to see what's happening. Our cubes here are now, as soon as they pass through the tractor beam, they move up and find the UFO. And then they don't really do anything once they get there. They just kind of stick to the UFO, sort of. And if that's your goal, if you want to like show this sort of payload or something as part of the UFO, maybe you want to like fill up a bag, or like have the cubes fill up some kind of uh, container or bag or something. Then you can have those visible. So that's one thing that's kind of cool is you could do. But for now, I think we might just delete them as soon as they hit the UFO. Or either you could delete them or you can stop them. But for this example, we might just go ahead and delete those. It's the easiest thing to do. But before we do that, we might add a little bit of a spin to it. So as soon as it finds the target, uh, well, while it's finding the target, it'll sort of spin. Um, Continuous, and then maybe, so set the spin to continuous by value, and we'll do like 500 random 3D. So now you can see what's happening. They kind of spin up toward the UFO. As soon as they pass through the tractor beam, they start spinning. So that's pretty cool. And now what we want to do is delete them as soon as they hit the UFO. So on that case, we'll do so if you want to do that, we'll do an object test. And then we'll do, if it's above the local Z of the UFO, then it'll test true. So we'll choose the UFO. As soon as it gets above the local Z of the UFO, which is the bottom part of the UFO, then it'll start deleting it. Well, when we use a delete operator, right? this, connect this up, on entry event, and then we don't really have to show this as anything, but just to visualize it, we will set it to geometry. So now you can see the UFO is deleting the cubes as soon as they get up to it, which is pretty cool. And I would add a little bit more realism, I guess, if you want to call it that, to this. You can add a bunch more effects to this. Let's say if you wanted to make them all physical objects that could like kind of bounce around, or maybe they all kind of attract toward it slowly, um, then you could play with the particle physics a little bit, or make them physics objects or something. But for now, maybe we'll just scale them. Like as soon as they get in the tractor beam field, they'll start moving and rotating and scaling at the same time. So it kind of looks like they're getting sucked up into the UFO. So that we could use a scale operator, and then we could do inherit previous, and then maybe set it to like 20. And then we could set the interpolation something like 0.5. Maybe give a little bit of variation. So maybe we want to adjust the acceleration a little bit to where they get, as soon as they get in there, in the tractor beam field, they start moving up toward. Let's increase this a little bit too. Find target. Do 70%. There you go. I mean, that's working a little better. It flies away. Okay, so now that we have that all set up and working, we could add a bit of variation to the materials for the cubes, maybe make them like random colors or something. And this is a method you could actually apply if you have a multi-sub-object material set up that has different texture maps. So you could apply different texture maps to the same object or different objects if you want. So in this shape operator, you could add however many different types of objects that you want. You can add custom objects. In this case, we're just using like a built-in standard mesh type, but you can reference any objects in your scene, which is pretty cool. But for this example, maybe we'll just make the materials a bunch of random different colors or something. So we'll do material ID, and we'll set this to like random. And then we'll quickly make a little multi-sub-object material. So multi-sub-object, set it to like 4. Since we're not rendering this out, I'm just using the standard scanline materials. Copy this down, make a few copies here, and I'll quickly just like change the color, like a blue. Let's do teal, a sea foam, and yellow. So now we have our little multi-sub-object, and then we can just go ahead and apply that to the whole Typhlo object, and you can see all of them change. So now they're completely random, which is kind of cool. And so we move this over, scrub through, you can see that's working pretty nicely. You can see it retains the material ID all the way through the flow to the various operators. So that's kind of handy. And then last step, if you do want to render this out, make sure that you add the mesh operator, and you can set this to render only, unless if you're having the cubes interact with any other simulation in the scene, then you could uncheck this, and then you can, if you were to have, let's say, Smoke, you can use Phoenix FD to produce some smoke from the field here, the tractor beam field, or something that'd be kind of cool. Maybe the smoke would be emitting from the ground, and then you can have it um, use a vortex or something, and then like suck the smoke up into the UFO and kill it. So that's an option. You could do a lot with Phoenix FD, which is pretty cool. We won't go into that. I want to do some Phoenix FD tutorials in the future, but for now, just make sure for this flow, you probably don't need one here. You don't need that, but whatever, just for redundancy's sake. So that'll allow you to actually process the rendering. You'll be able to render this out. So yeah, that's it. That's it for this tutorial. If you guys have any questions or comments, please leave them down below in the comment section. If you like this video, you found it helpful at all, click that like button and subscribe to the channel if want to see some more tutorials in the future. Again, also if you guys have any other suggestions for tutorials you might want to see using Tyflow in 3D Studio Max, please let me know. I'm also going to do some Phoenix FD tutorials, and I'd like to get into some using the Unreal Engine to create some tutorials, blueprint tutorials and stuff like that. If you guys are interested in any kind of game development or anything like that, maybe bringing some assets from 3D Studio Max into Unreal. So that's an option too. Um, Again, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you soon.